Good morning, everyone, and welcome to January 12th, 2022. Igor, you have a demo item. Let's rock it out.
Yeah, let's go. So this is the Redis 6.2 upgrade testing. In production, we're currently running 6.0, and we want to upgrade to 6.2 as part of the Kubernetes migration because the chart only supports 6.2. And well, we also want to upgrade at some point anyway. And so this kind of makes sense as the next step. Since this is not a bug fix upgrade, but like a minor point upgrade, that does mean that we need to be a bit more diligent about testing. And so that includes upgrade and downgrade compatibility testing. We previously did this type of testing for the upgrade from 5.0 to 6.0. And so I was able to reuse some of the tooling that we'd built for that. And I'll just quickly show what that looks like. So this is the Redis upgrade harness project. It uses Docker Compose and a lot of Bash to test different scenarios. And those scenarios then run through CI. And so we can take a look at one of them. So there's a whole bunch of setup where it's setting up several containers. And then we're actually starting the scenario. We start a background process that is writing incremental IDs or incremental integers to a list in Redis. And then this particular scenario is Redis upgrade downgrade. So we start out with 3 Redises on version 6.0. And you can, well, I guess you can see it here. Yeah, so starting 6.0 with 3 instances, right? And in this case, we're actually starting Sentinels already on 6.2. So there's a few different scenarios here, but the idea being if we were to upgrade the Sentinels ahead of time and then upgrade the Redises, that's kind of what that would look like. So we then
So I do have
perform.
a
Oh yeah,
quick
go ahead.
question about
Go
that.
ahead.
Should we have
Yeah.
a scenario where we upgrade the Sentinel as well?
Yes, I think there is one, but I'll go back and double check that because yes, we the way we will be doing it is upgrading them in tandem. Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, so upgrading 01, we wait for step down, we wait for it to connect as a is that waiting for connect as a replica? I don't remember why we have this extra wait for connected. No, we do. So it steps down, it becomes a replica. We then stop that container. We start the 6.2 container. It shares the data directory with this one. And so then we wait for it to come up and connect as a replica. And so we've got 01, 02, 03. Then we're kind of, we also run a Ruby client to make sure that we can actually connect to this Redis from Ruby and do some kind of interaction. We then downgrade back down to the previous version. So downgrade from 6.2 to 6.0. And we do that for all 3. We then run Ruby again, just to make sure that we can connect and actually run Ruby commands or run Redis commands from a Ruby client. And then finally, since we had this background process that was continuously writing to a list, we go back and check that list. And that's what this does. And we see we lost only 50% of our writes, which is expected because we do lose some writes during failovers. And since all of these scenarios are back to back, the overall time frame is relatively short. And so as a percentage of the couple seconds that it took to run through the scenario, we had, about 50% of the time we were doing failovers anyway. So that's why that number is going to be relatively high on these short scenarios. And yeah, I mean, that's basically how it works. All of these passed without any changes needed from my side. And they do model kind of the upgrade and downgrade paths pretty well already. But I will look into that case that you mentioned, Skarbek, and make sure that we have the tandem upgrade covered as well if it's not there yet.
I wasn't around. Well, I was around. I just didn't pay attention to this. When we did the upgrade to Redis from 5 to 6, did we use this for testing, but did we use some variety of these scripts to actually perform the upgrade, or is that still done via some other segregated procedure?
Yeah. This is isolated testing. It's not involved in the actual upgrade process. Yeah.
That's neat that you're doing all this inside of CI.
Yeah. Yep. And then the last point that I had was, here's the AMER to bump the version in Omnibus, and was fairly straightforward to do as well. It was actually deleting more code than adding. So we've got an old backported patch that we were applying that we can now delete. So that's always nice. And yeah, I've triggered, well, I actually had one question about this. I triggered this package. Does that mean this package is now available somewhere? I mean, can I go find that somewhere and actually install it, or not? And if so, where?
Might be something you asked distribution. I don't know anything about this.
Okay, yeah, I'll check with them if.
Yeah, maybe you can also test the QA, the QA job, because I think is testing the package that it built.
Yeah.
So maybe if you look at what it's doing there, maybe you have some hints or on where it is. But yeah, but it has some distribution.
Yeah, I'll look into
that they packaged it via some sort of Docker container because it runs inside of a CI job where QA runs inside of Docker.
Yeah.
I would hedge a bet there's a way to pull it either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did see there's this trigger package job, and then there's a GitLab Docker job. So it does push something here. This one right here, Omnibus GitLab Mirror. So I might be able to just run this directly. I'll play with it. Yeah, that's all I had for the demo.
Cool. Look, before we move on to the fact that we don't have any discussion items, does anyone have any questions?
I do have one. And so when you showed the omnibus merge request, I have two questions actually. So when you showed the omnibus merge request, you were mentioning that we are removing some patches, right? So we were patching stuff. So does this mean that the test that you show us in CI is running from a version of Redis, which is not exactly the same that we are running in production because we patched our own production environment with a non-standard package?
Yes, that's correct. So the tests are using kind of the stock Bitnami images and don't include our custom patches. However, those patches, I mean, they could have an effect, of course, but they seem fairly unrelated to the specific stuff that we're looking to do during the upgrade specifically.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
And also the one that we now eliminated leaves us with now only one patch left, and that patch is only, well, in quotes, a build flag addition.
Okay.
So there's no C patches left at this point. And I think you had a second
I had another question.
Yes,
yeah, right. So my question here is about how we deploy this thing, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, this is not part of the, even though we're talking about an omnibus build, this is not part of a regular deployment process because there are special fleet, there's a fleet that runs those packages. So is this going to happen with a chef upgrade, or how are we going to roll out this type of change?
Yes, so we pin the omnibus version for these hosts or for these roles in Chef. And so we've got like way outdated omnibus running on those, which is kind of problematic for some other reasons as well. But the general process is to, and we have extensive change issues that we've used in the past for this. Is to basically stop Chef on all of those boxes, then do some.
So we apply manually on a percentage.
Basically check which one is the primary, do a failover away if we're upgrading that node, and
understood.
Then run through Chef and then run a reconfigure. Yeah.
Okay, so this means that this may be the last time we are doing something like this by hand, because the goal is to move to Kubernetes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, obviously, right. But the thing is that even using outdated packages will no longer be a problem because we will not run the GitLab package in Kubernetes. We will just run the.
Correct.
Okay.
And this is kind of the reason why, or one of the big reasons why we're doing this project in the first place, is because this upgrade process is such a pain in the butt.
One of the questions I had is, I did see that Omnibus MR. What's holding us back from removing that one build flag?
I don't know what that's used for.
Okay.
It seems out of scope for this change.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
But it will not be there once we move to Kubernetes because we run stock images. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Actually, I think this is pretty vague, but I think it's related to some of the platforms that we build on. So it's like to support some Raspberry Pi something.
What are the next few things that you're going to be looking forward to outside of this Redis upgrade testing work?
Yeah, I guess we've kind of got a backlog of, at this point, a backlog of quite a few sort of investigation type issues where it's like we saw some weird behavior. So I guess I'm going to try and split my time between that and supporting everyone else working on the project. So Skarbek, let's collab.
Yep, I opened up some of those. So as far as what I'm working on I don't really have anything to show for it, but I'm trying to figure out a better way to perform some of the testing, because every single time I've performed any testing within the last 2 weeks, I end up doing some testing. I see something that looks strange and I start documenting and researching that instead of accomplishing the goal that I kind of stood out to do for that period of time. So I've kind of reorganized the issue that was kind of a dumping grounds of my notes at that point, and I created some new issues that Igor just mentioned. Um, Igor also should be a set or a repository that would that could be used for some extensive testing. So I'm going to start using that to my advantage and perform some better testing and creating a kind of a procedural task of what is it going to look like to take an existing cluster, merge the Kubernetes cluster into it, and vice versa, remove the old VMs and such. That way we just have a repeatable test process that I could spin up and spin down as necessary. That way I'm not trying to deal with the various the current implementations where we have lengthy passwords and I can't find the pass for various things. It just takes me a long time to test. So I'm trying to make it easier to test. That's my current goal right now. And building the procedure associated with what we need to accomplish for transitioning. I think at this point, I've already accomplished the fact that we know it's feasible that we could run both Kubernetes and virtual machines at the same time inside of a single Redis cluster. It's just a matter of making sure it's going to work as desired. So I'm still hedging my bets on that Bitnami is going to accept my pull request, where we are leveraging the use of external DNS for setting our pod names and such. This does have the requirement that we are running 6.2 ahead of time, and it does require that we probably shift from using the announced IP address to announcing the host names of our virtual machines. So I think after we upgrade, we're going to want to make the transition to swapping out our host or swapping out the IP addresses with host names, which that looks to be a minor configuration change. So there's still a little bit of work to go. So I think that's all the commentary I have related to the Redis work that I'm working on.
Awesome.
Does anyone else have any more questions related to this work? Okay. Ahmad, I did have a question for you if you're paying attention. Okay. So question, what's the status of GitLab SSHD at this moment in time? Where are we at with that?
So we are after your merge for the fix for the chart 1, we are now waiting for the CR, the change request, to deploy it to staging, and then pass it to QA to test, or the team actually, I think source code team to test, or yeah, I don't remember the team name, but like we will pass it to them also to test the backend developers. So basically, just waiting for the CR to be ready.
Perfect. And I think you pinged me on that, so I'll review that later today, and hopefully we get to execute. Do you think we'll be able to execute that sometime this week?
Yes, I mean, if you see or deem the CR good, we can execute it. I can execute it tomorrow.
Perfect. Okay, I'll take a look. Alrighty. There's nothing else on the agenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we end? Excellent. Well, you all have a lovely day.